People who have been arrested, what did you get arrested for? When I was in the 10th grade, my ex-girlfriend cheated on me with someone older. We were the same age at the time. I encountered them at the bus stop, which was the last stop for the bus heading from a nearby town to mine. The guy tried to spar with me, but I stood up for myself. Just as the bus arrived, he ran on board and told the driver not to let me on, claiming I had instigated the conflict. I attempted to explain the situation to the bus driver, but he refused to listen. The bus had a McGruff House sticker indicating it was meant to be a safe place for teenagers. I became extremely upset, and in a moment of anger, I tried to reach the older guy by the window. Now, this was a very foolish action. I then sat down and waited for the police to arrive. When they did, they handcuffed me and placed me in the back of the police car, but they were very respectful throughout the process. I spoke with them and explained what had happened, providing the other guy's name. They laughed and removed the handcuffs once they understood I wasn't a troublesome person. They then drove me to the next town to take me home. The following day, I called the bus depot to explain the situation and offered to clean buses for free as compensation for the broken window. They said they would speak to the bus driver and get back to me, but they never did. I never saw that bus driver driving buses again, though. Dude, the older guy dating a 10th grader? That guy should be the one in cuffs, right? Story 2. I've been arrested twice and charged once, thankfully only serving probation. The first time, me and my friends had stolen one of those large orange construction barrels with a flashing light on top. After the fun faded, I put it in the trunk of my 1988 Nissan Stanza wagon, where it stuck out about 2 inches above the rear window. The barrel sat there for months while the car wasn't running. After getting the car repaired, I started driving it, and my ADHD made it easy to forget the barrel was there. One night, on my way to a friend's house after work, I was pulled over for a curfew check around 1 a.m. The police shone a light into the car, highlighting the barrel, and I knew it would be a problem. More concerning, however, were the baggies of stems and seeds in the cup holder. The officer arrested me for stealing the barrel and searched the car, choosing to ignore the baggies. Back at the station, they discovered the barrel wasn't owned by the state and had to call the owner of a private construction company at 2:30 a.m. I listened as the cops were yelled at for wasting time. The guy refused to press charges and even said I could keep the barrel. After a few hours in a holding cell, the police took me back to my car and followed me until I returned the barrel to where I had found it, which happened to be at the end of my road. They told my mom, who also laughed at them for wasting their time. The second arrest was different. I was a shift leader at Target, having given my 2 weeks' notice to rejoin my high school band and attempt to go pro. As a result, I was given dull tasks. One job was cleaning the electronics counter, where I found drawers filled with used gift cards. I asked my manager what to do with them, and he told me to throw them out. I decided to scan them first, finding around $100 in total. Since they were destined for the trash, I kept them, thinking I could use the extra $100. I learned about anti-theft monitoring and the POS system the hard way. Target was alerted to me scanning hundreds of cards and watched me take and later use them at a different Target. I was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor theft under $500. After consulting a lawyer who also happened to be one of 2 judges in town, I decided to plead guilty in exchange for no jail time and my record being expunged after completing probation. Looking back, the first incident was clearly wrong. The second still puzzles me, but it wasn't worth fighting. Story 3. When I was a teenager during my primary flight instruction, I was tasked with a long-distance solo flight. My plan included a stop at a major busy airport to use the bathroom and buy snacks before continuing my journey. After landing, I followed the progressive taxi instructions from air traffic control, and I parked my small aircraft next to others on the ramp. I then shut down my plane and headed towards what I thought was the terminal building. However, I encountered 2 issues. The building was completely shuttered, and an airliner pulled up to the ramp shortly after. As I was looking for a bathroom, the airliner crew must have alerted airport security about me. Unbeknownst to me, air traffic control had directed me into a SIDA, a security identification display area, where it's not permitted to wander. Airport police arrived and detained me for about an hour. I explained my situation and they confirmed my story with the ground controllers. The officers then escorted me back to my plane, with one of them advising me to leave and never return. Overall, it wasn't a negative experience with the police. I believe they could tell my story was too foolish to be criminal, and my politeness likely helped my case. I guess his side quest, which was supposed to be straightforward, took an unexpected turn. It's like when you're playing a video game and what seems like a minor fetch quest suddenly escalates into a full-blown battle with the final boss. So he went from like pilot in need of a restroom to intruder in a high security zone in the blink of an eye. Story 4. One night after drinking, I was walking home. I was sobering up but still had a ways to go, so I decided to take a break in the adoration chamber of the Catholic Church, which is supposed to be open 24 hours. I thought I'd say some prayers, get some rest, and seek forgiveness for my drinking earlier in the night. As I entered, I noticed a group of what I assumed were nun initiates with an old deacon at around 3 a.m. It was strange because he was going from one to the next, kissing them. It wasn't anything extreme, but it was more than just a peck. I was still a bit intoxicated and couldn't help but speak up, starting with, "What is this?" I didn't fight them, but they quickly rushed me out and locked the door behind me. I yelled at the deacon through the door a few more times, letting him know I thought he was impure. Then I sat right in front of the door, feeling like something wrong was happening and wanting him to know I'd tell everyone. The police arrived and one officer snapped his rubber glove. I realized they thought I was causing trouble, but I was cooperative. They understood I had chosen to walk home instead of driving since I've been drinking. From the backseat of the police car, I explained that something suspicious was going on at the church. The officer just laughed and said they were already aware. Another time, I was once pulled over for speeding, although I was actually driving with the flow of traffic. The officer issued me a warning, or so I believed. I received 2 papers, and without reading them carefully, I threw them away, thinking I hadn't done anything wrong. 2 months later, I received a letter stating there was a warrant out for my arrest and I needed to go to court to pay fines. When I arrived at the court, the staff couldn't find any fines associated with my name. After a while, I was directed to go next door. There, I was told to fill out a form, and I soon realized I was turning myself in. Unable to leave, I spent around 10 hours in a cell before persuading a guard to let me make a phone call. I was bailed out a couple of hours later for $550. Upon reviewing the charges, it stated, failed to pay child support, despite the fact that I have no children. Story 5. When I visited my ex-girlfriend's house with concert tickets to surprise her for one of her favorite artists, I instead found her in bed with another man. Typically calm, I felt something snap in my brain. Without a word, I grabbed the man, pulled him out of the house, and stormed him. She was screaming and crying, and after landing several strikes, he then stopped defending himself, leading me to cause more harm. It wasn't honorable, but honor wasn't on my mind. Realizing she was calling the police, I decided to leave in my car. I should have stopped, but rage impaired my judgment, and I tried to escape by speeding away. I was quickly pursued by police, and after a short chase, decided to stop. I was arrested on different charges but had a skilled lawyer who helped reduce both to misdemeanors. I served 6 months in jail and 4 years on probation. The other man, though, suffered major injuries, so there's that. Story 6. At a wedding in Utah years ago, I had a confrontation with a bartender who was making inappropriate comments about one of the bridesmaids. Soon after, I lost consciousness despite not drinking enough to black out. I suspect he may have spiked my drink. The next thing I knew, I had left the wedding and was trying to get food at a Burger King drive-thru on a bicycle. When they refused to serve me, I climbed through the window to get my own food, an incident captured on video. I then got into a scuffle with 2 police officers, knocking both of them before being captured with a net and subsequently restrained by several other officers. I regained consciousness in a concrete cell covered in my own mess. When I finally got someone's attention, the officer told me I was in jail because I was a pain to deal with. After some time, they allowed me to clean up, but the only clothes available were a pink prison-style jumpsuit that was far too small for me. I had to call my grandmother to bail me out, which was incredibly embarrassing. Fortunately, the charges were dropped in exchange for attending rehab. My lawyer and I attempted to pursue legal action against the bartender who had a history of spiking drinks, but we didn't have enough evidence to support a criminal case. Alright, if that last story cracked you up like it did for me, imagine that guy coming up to a drive-thru window on a bike and then actually trying to crawl through the drive-thru window? Good stuff. Then please do remember to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Let's go ahead and go on to the next one. Story 7. I was at a bar when the bouncer informed us that police outside wanted to speak with our group of about 10 people, not knowing that one of our friends had discharged a fire extinguisher in an empty street. As we went outside, an officer aggressively pointed his finger at my wife, who was Asian, and shouted, "Do you speak English?" Another friend, who was very Caucasian, was wearing a hoodie with what appeared to be Asian characters on it. The officer then accused our entire group of being part of an Asian dangerous group. I found the accusation somewhat amusing, yet was angered by the officer's behavior towards my wife. When asked my age and occupation, I simply stated I was a student. The officer criticized me for still being a student at an old age, to which I sarcastically replied, "Sorry, I didn't go to a 6-month program," mocking the local police academy's training duration. This led to my immediate arrest, along with a friend in the hoodie. We were placed in solitary confinement at the jail and released about 4 to 5 hours later. Upon leaving, we inquired about the reason for our detention and were told it was for being intoxicated in public, despite being outside a bar. No charges were ever filed. I've often wished I could find my photo from that night. Story 8. It was 13 years ago and I was a young adult. I was on my own with no real support system, just barely making enough money to pay rent and not much more. I stole groceries from Walmart, food, deodorant, and body wash. The total dollar amount came to $50.51, which was just high enough to make it a Class B misdemeanor. When I got caught and arrested, I just gave up on life. At that moment, I thought, well, the world is won, I'm beat, take me to jail. And I have no idea how a friend caught wind of my arrest, but he did. He posted bail and bought me some groceries. He suggested that I find a roommate, which I did, and between my roommate and I, we made enough to survive. That act of kindness gave me the strength to keep trying. But it wasn't all sunshine after that. First of all, a court-appointed lawyer is not free. I paid several $100s as a fine for my crime, another $150 for court fees, and $250 for that lazy, lying, quote-unquote lawyer. Several years later, I struggled to find work because I had a criminal record. I did commit a crime. I stole from one of the wealthiest families in the nation. I committed this crime because I was desperate and I was hungry. I was punished for being poor, and part of that punishment was being forced to remain poor for another decade. I have such contempt for a criminal justice system now. Today, my husband and I are financially stable, and we even have a retirement plan. I am so grateful for the stability and the fiscal knowledge my husband has brought to my life. Well, if life hands you lemons and you're in Walmart, I guess you're supposed to steal the sugar too. But hey, at least you didn't try to open a lemonade stand in the dairy aisle, because that's a whole different charge, right? Story 9. In 1997, I was in college and engaged to my girlfriend who lived about 2.5 hours away. We were getting married in January and I was moving to where she lived. To get one order of business taken care of, I took a full paycheck and used it to open a joint checking account. A few months later, we married and moved the same weekend. I sat down and wrote checks from our joint account to pay the last of the bills from her rental. Then in August 1998, I was driving to work and was pulled over by city police for expired plates. The officer took my license and came walking slowly back to the car with his hand on his weapon and ordered me to exit the car slowly, turn around, and put my hands behind my back. I was very confused and scared. Once in his car, he said I would have the charges read to me at the station. I was then told that I had a county warrant for passing a bad check. I was transported to county and was told my warrant was for a $35 check to the gas company. My fiancée had been using the debit card and not documenting these expenditures, so when we got married, she had messed up the account and caused overdrafts I was unaware of. The gas company had sent another bill to the old address, but she apparently didn't leave a forward notice with the post office. It would have been great for the gas company to have realized the same people now had a new account with them in a house 4 miles from the old one, rather than turn it into the county prosecutor. Story 10. In 1989, a year after leaving the service and with long hair, I was on my way to pick up my dad at 2 a.m. to go to work. A car was bothering me, following closely from about a 1/16 of a mile back. It continued to tail me until I reached a gravel parking lot next to a motorcycle club near my dad's house. I was driving a Daihatsu Rocky, similar to a Suzuki Samurai. As the car followed me into the lot, I spun my vehicle around to face them and they turned on their police lights. Officers Romo and Abrams stepped out and I exited my car as they shone a spotlight on me. I asked them to move the light away from my face, which I wouldn't recommend doing. They claimed they couldn't keep up with me because I was driving too fast. I pointed out that my car had a 4-cylinder engine and no one would believe their story. They then accused me of driving recklessly. After a moment of thought, I responded that I wasn't driving recklessly. Officer Romo then pushed me onto the hood of my car. The situation escalated and I decided not to resist, hoping he would stop. However, he had me on the ground and held my left arm behind my back. He attempted to bend my legs, but I kept them straight. Leaning into my ear, he asked if I would respect him now. I agreed, hoping to de-escalate the situation. Fortunately, my dad had seen both cars drive past as he was looking out his front window and was making his way towards us. Officer Abrams alerted Romo that someone was coming and they let me up. In court, I faced charges of reckless driving and resisting arrest. The judge asked how I pleaded, and I stated I was innocent. He advised me to speak with the district attorney to work out a deal. I explained that I had been physically struck by Officer Romo, and the DA, familiar with his tactics, offered to drop the charges if I signed documents agreeing not to sue. At the time, this seemed like a fair deal, so I accepted. Since then, I've been very polite with law enforcement, though I still harbor resentment towards those two officers. Story 11. During my final weekend in the military, while stationed in Las Vegas, I visited a club to meet two friends who were already there. I drove to the club and parked in front. The night was going well, with the club playing feel-good songs from the late 70s, and everyone was dancing and having a good time. Suddenly, the lights turned on and people started running from the back of the club to the front. I was confused. As I walked out, I heard a police copter and saw police cars careening off the parking lot. I heard screaming coming from a crowd gathered in a circle nearby, with someone in the middle performing CPR on a person. I realized something serious was happening and sat on the trunk of my car to wait. A police officer approached me with a notepad, asking for my full name, address, social security number, and what I had seen. I provided him with my driver's license, and when he asked for my SSN again, I gave him the last 4 digits. He insisted on my full SSN, but I refused, showing him my military ID and reiterating that I wouldn't give out my full social security number. We argued about it, with him claiming he didn't need to steal my identity since he made $100,000 a year. Eventually, he tried to arrest me for obstruction of justice if I didn't provide my full SSN. I was handcuffed and placed in a police car, which prompted my friends to start calling me frantically. The police taunted me for about 20 minutes, suggesting I should be forced out of the military for not following orders, and using other disrespectful language which I won't repeat. One of the officers, who was a retired military member, called the military base, not the one I was stationed at. The security forces personnel on the phone informed him I wasn't assigned to that base and suggested he try another. After calling the correct base, the officer demanded to speak to my first sergeant because I had refused to comply during an active investigation. The security forces member said he couldn't give out the number but would have my first sergeant call him. My first sergeant called the officer back within 2 minutes, sounding puzzled and indicating he was in bed. The officer had his colleagues around him with the phone on speaker. After hanging up, his friends advised him to let me go, implying I was in trouble now. I called my first sergeant to explain what had happened, and he responded with disbelief, affirming that I had done the right thing. I believe the arrest is still on my record. Story 12. I've been arrested multiple times, to the point where it feels like I'm being targeted. My first arrest occurred during a traffic stop when police found a broken vaporizer device with a tank. The glass on the tank was broken, and they claimed I broke it during the stop, thinking it contained grass oil. They detained me and took me to the station after conducting a field test. A urine test revealed THC, and I was detained on suspicion of being under an influence, despite THC remaining detectable in urine for over 30 days. It was my first arrest, and my lawyer advised me to accept a plea deal of 1 year's probation and reckless driving, as fighting it in court would be more costly. The second incident happened while driving from New York to Florida, where I encountered a DUI, or random checkpoint. It turned out my license was suspended due to an unpaid parking ticket I wasn't aware of, as all my mail went to my mother's address while I was in college and frequently changed residences. I was arrested in West Virginia for driving without a license and held for weeks due to the difficulty of being released from out-of-state custody. One of the most memorable incidents occurred when I went surfing at the beach with a girl. She stayed on the beach to tan while I surfed. Unbeknownst to me, she placed a bottle in my bag with my towel and spare clothes as she drank and hid it. I returned from the water completely sober, tired, and cold from the clouding and setting sun. She seemed a bit off and complained that I had left her alone, wanting to swim with me and spend time together. She grabbed my hand and we went into the water, where I supported her in the waves. As it got dark, I suggested we leave. Upon returning to my bag, I discovered a bottle and jokingly remarked about finding it. Suddenly, flashlights surrounded us and I thought they were friends. However, they were police officers who accused me of having an open container of drink and possessing glass on the beach. They separated us and falsely accused me of different charges, mistaking me for a 50-year-old wanted criminal with a similar name. I was on bond and had to serve a month in jail. The original call to the police was due to someone reporting that I was dragging a girl in the water. When they arrived, I was sober, she was intoxicated, and she admitted the bottle was hers, yet I was the one who went to jail. Yikes. And if any of these stories got to you, or at least you learned a lesson or two about dealing with the police, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.